Hi, everybody. Today is Friday, April 8th, not 10. 8th, 9th. Yeah,
8, 9, 10. What? It's some
exactly.
date. It's in April sometime.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
April 10th, 2026. And our dear friend, our brother, Larry Johnson, is here with us. Welcome back.
yeah. I had to check the calendar. What day is it? What time is it? Hmm.
Yeah, it's April 10th, Friday. Larry, let me start with what's going on in Islamabad in Pakistan. It seems that the two delegations, two groups are going to get there and they're going to talk tomorrow. And the meeting is going to be tomorrow. They're going to talk to each other. But we had some sort of understanding on the part of Iranian because they were talking about it's going to be based on 10-point plan, 10-point proposal. Then JD Vance said something else, and here is what JD Vance said, Larry. Then let's talk about what is the meaning of what JD Vance said.
Have been involved in this. There are three different 10-point proposals, at least, that I've seen floating around. The first 10-point proposal was something that was submitted, and we think, frankly, was probably written by ChatGPT, that was submitted to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. That immediately went in the garbage and was rejected. There was a second 10-point proposal that was much more reasonable, that was based on some back and forth between us, between the Pakistanis and Iranians. That is the 10-point proposal that the president was referencing in his truth yesterday. And then, frankly, I've seen a third 10-point proposal that's even more maximalist than the first 10-point proposal that's been floating around various social media channels. Now, here's what's interesting about all this, is that I've seen various organs, the New York Times, CNN, others, pick up and run the original 10-point proposal based on little more than a random Yahoo in Iran submitting it to public access television in the country of Iran, and then them saying that somehow represents the negotiating position of the government.
Larry, what's wrong? What's right? What is your understanding of the plan?
JD Vance has brown eyes. That means he's completely full of shit. Okay? Um, it's not a 10-point proposal. And I was going to disagree with your language. It is the preconditions that Iran has established for negotiations. In other words, the statement that Iran will be in control of the Strait of Hormuz. That's not a negotiating position. They're not saying, "Okay, we'd like to be in control. What do you think, United States? Let's talk it out." Bullshit. That's not no. Iran's now in control of the Strait of Hormuz. The United States accept that. You got to accept that. The attacks on Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, they have to cease. And if you start that up, we're walking. Iran's not going to, quote, sit with you as these attacks continue. And all this posturing by the United States is just, it's disgusting because, they like to pretend, oh, we're on the strong seat. It was the United States that was begging, pleading, desperate to have a negotiation. And they sent their 15-point plan, and Iran did throw that in the trash. Iran sent back, said, okay, these are the 10 things that must be in place so that we can have negotiations. So that the United States doesn't want to admit that. But, for example, the U.S. initially signed off on that on Tuesday night. And then, oh, my God, the Zionist lobbies went crazy. Oh, they're selling us out. And then the next morning, Trump's doing the Michael Jackson moonwalk backwards. Oh, no, we didn't say that. No. Hey, you better not charge a fee for people coming through the Strait of Hormuz or else. Or else what, you clown? I mean, I am so disgusted by Donald Trump. He is detestable. He needs to be removed from office. He is a danger to the world. So it's still not clear if Iran is going to show up in Islamabad. They made it very clear. The drones are still flying over Iran. They've shot them down, but that's a violation of what they requested. Back off. That's the message to the United States. Back off. But Iran is still. They closed the Strait of Hormuz yesterday in retaliation for. Shut it down so nothing was coming in and out because of Israel's attack on Lebanon. The country that's out of control in this is Lebanon, is Israel in terms of their actions towards Lebanon. So it's a dynamic process in play right now.
It turns to be so much complicated for Donald Trump to keep Netanyahu, to somehow control Netanyahu from what he intends to do. The case of Lebanon is one of them. They talk about, even we had the article in New York Times, they said the text that was sent to the Pakistani prime minister was coordinated, was somehow written by both sides, Pakistani together with Americans. Then he put it there, and he's talking about Lebanon. In that text, he's mentioning, including Lebanon and elsewhere. And here is, Larry, the text first, the first edition of the text was, it's written draft - Pakistan's prime minister message on X. Who sent that message to the Pakistani prime minister that he just copied and pasted on his account?
Yeah, I don't know. It obviously was a copy paste job, but the United States signed off on a deal that it then reneged on, it backed away from, and it did so under pressure from the Zionist groups, both Christian and Jewish. When this news of this first broke Tuesday night, the Zionists were in shock. We saw that with Mark Levin. He was very subdued. I'm sure Bibi Netanyahu was having a meltdown. They got a hold of Miriam Edelson to, put pressure on Trump to, she's going to take back her $250 million. And then Trump with his outbursts on social media. He's honest to God, he is deranged, mentally not fit to be president, and he must be removed. And I'm afraid that we don't have a way to do it. 25th Amendment's too complicated, and impeachment will take too much time. But let's just hope that that Susie Wiles will, take the lead and keep him from doing something utterly crazy. But they ought to. These truth social messages he puts out, just attacking people, the attacks he unleashed yesterday on Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Candace Owens, Alex Jones, just disgusting. A level, God, he's worse than some teenage girl. He just, thin-skinned. There's nothing presidential about him. And this is, good God, do I regret voting for the man. Take it back 100 times. He will go down in history as the absolute worst president in the history of the United States.
What's so amazing about Mark Levin, as you mentioned, the night before announcement of the ceasefire, he was talking about how to nuke Iran, how to destroy everything, remembering what has happened in Japan. And right after the announcement, he was mentioning something that, what can we do with the people of Iran right now? They need us. We have to go there. How can we betray? He was talking about nuking Iranian people. And the day after, he was talking about, saving Iranian people and helping, liberating Iranian people.
Yeah. No, there's just no. Again, these are not rational human beings. The whole Zionist cause is built on an entire fraud, a lie. God gave us this land. God loves us more than everybody else. Oh, shove it. Okay, I'm tired of hearing it. I am I join those who are anti-Zionist. It is an evil cult, is best described.
Larry, how much of what has happened with this decision of Donald Trump? My understanding was that Iran has never changed its position since the war started. They always asked the same sort of points, but it was Donald Trump on his part to accept it, to go negotiate on those points. That's why it was all his decisions. The deadline, it was about him, not about him negotiating with Iranians.
Yeah, yeah. Just think about it. The reality is the United States has been pressing the Pakistanis, the Egyptians, Turkey, have been pleading with them, get a hold of those Iranians. Have them. We want to have talks, please. Well, why? You're winning the war. I mean, you've crushed Iran. There's nothing left. They've collapsed, right? So this is another example of how Trump says one thing, but his actions dictate another. They're desperate to get this stopped because of the economic implications. The stock market still does not accurately or adequately reflect the damage. When Trump announced, "Oh yeah, we got this peace agreement," or negotiations are underway. Oh, the stock market blew up, 1,400 points. The fundamentals of the economics have not changed one little bit. The reality is there are supply chain shortages. The price of oil is still going up. In actual buying on today, futures market is, dropped, but the actual what you're paying for it today is still high, about $150 a barrel. And the United States is recognizing that our inflation is going up. They just recorded that in the market today. The world is in a recession, basically, and the economists say, "Oh no, that's not true. We haven't had 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Just wait." And Iran, ironically, will be one of the few countries that does well out of this economic chaos. Russia as well will be doing pretty good. Any country that actually is a major producer of oil, they will have revenues, at least from the oil revenue, they'll do well. Nigeria should do pretty good. But the rest of the world is suffering throughout Asia, and the suffering is going to come here to the United States.
We have to understand what was the main reason for Donald Trump, after 48 hours of ultimatum, 5 days and 10 days, and coming back to 48, then Tuesday at 8 p.m. It was all about the deadline for Iranians, to force Iranians. But what has happened on Tuesday at 8 p.m. that made Donald Trump, or somehow convinced Donald Trump, that the only way out of the conflict would be some sort of talks between the two parties? Because economically, you've just mentioned, politically, we know a lot is going on behind the scene that we are not witnessing, but we know what is happening in terms of the political, the MAGA movement, those people who supported Donald Trump in the United States. We know how Democrats are putting pressure on Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But I think the reality, the base, the foundation of what has happened was the operation, the military operation, the capabilities on the battlefield that finally made Donald Trump, or convinced him, to go after talks. What was that? What was the whole conditions around politically, militarily, and economically?
Well, I think it is a combination of those factors. Look, it can also rule out that it was an economic play in order to enrich some members of his family and business associates, because he made the announcement at like 6:30, and people had already placed bets in the stock market and on the oil markets that the prices of stocks were going to go up and the price of oil was going to come down. I mean, he's done this actually the last 4 weeks in a row. Remember, they're all like, "Oh yeah, Louis, looks like we're going to have talks and it's going to get moving. And then the next day, so in the morning, stock market would go up. And then within 24 hours, people would realize, no, nothing's happening. That's a lie. And then the stock market would go back down. We've seen this roller coaster like this, and he's timed it every week. This is either Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday for the last 4 weeks. So we'll see him do it again next week, I'm sure. It's manipulation of the stock market. And there are, there should be some investigations on insider trading. There are people that are close to Trump that are getting the word, and then they're going out and making money off of this. The reality for the United States is the air defense systems, the PAC missiles, PAC-3 missiles on the Patriot, the THAAD missiles, they're done. They're depleted. Now they just have to wait for whatever is produced in the factories this month, and then those get delivered. But they're producing 50 PAC-3s a month, or maybe 60. Well, so that means they could potentially shoot down 30 incoming drones and or missiles. And they're not even that effective against those. But that, in theory, the same with the THAAD missiles. They do about 8 or 9 of those a month. And it's not clear what level of requirement for rare earth minerals exists to produce those. And then you got the JASSMs that are launched. Those are down in supply. The Tomahawk missiles, the supplies of those have been depleted. So really, the United States is in a position that if it goes to war with China, that war will be over in a week, and the United States would be clearly defeated. This whole misadventure that Trump was told that it was it wasn't going to pan out as he thought, but he went ahead and did it anyway, according to the New York Times. Now he's stuck with it because instead of a victory, he's looking at a defeat. Objectively, the U.S. Navy cannot get close to Iranian shores without the risk of getting blown out of the water. So they keep coming up close, and then they get attacked, and they retreat. So the Navy's is no longer a factor. You can't put ground troops of any size anywhere in or around Iran because they'll be slaughtered, chewed up. So that leaves air power, and the air power. The Iranians have improved their air defense over the last 3 weeks, so they're getting a more. Something has happened with either the Chinese and or the Russians, but their air defense is significantly improved, and they're using some methods that are not infrared as opposed to any kind of radar, and they're shooting down more aircraft. That fiasco trying to rescue, the rescue of that one crew member, that colonel who was in the back seat of the F-15 on Sunday. That United States lost $480 million worth of airframes between, and that's just counting the A-10, the F-15, the C-130s, 2 of those, the 4 AH-6 helicopters, 2 Predators, that's almost $500 million, within 2 days. So the United States can't sustain that.
Larry, you mentioned Donald Trump was told, as you mentioned the article in the New York Times. Who told him? Was it Mossad? Was it Benjamin Netanyahu? Was it CIA? Or a combination of all of them? And after all, we know the responsibility would be Trump's responsibility, would be his responsibility. Because after all, he's the last person to decide about going to war or not starting a new war in the Middle East.
Well, yeah, when you read that article, you have to read between the lines to see, the person who's most to blame for this war is Donald Trump, because they make it quite clear in that article. He's the one that ignored the advice of J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio and Dan Kane. Those were the principal ones saying, to hold off, don't do it. But he did it anyway. And he was explicitly told that this could disrupt the Strait of Hormuz. And he said, no, I don't think they'll do that. Okay, Mr. Wisdom, eat that. So Donald Trump is number one. He got, he bought into the Israeli lies. Israel's, they were the culprit in helping set the table to do this. But, both John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, said it's farcical, and Marco Rubio called it bullshit. Despite his advisors telling him not to do it, he did it. But the one cabinet member who was singled out as being the biggest cheerleader for this was Pete Hegseth. So I took this article as it's a sign that they've already started looking for the scapegoats, and Hegseth is at the front of the line because Trump's not going to accept any responsibility for his decision, even though this was his decision. He decided to do this after being counseled not to do it.
I think he mentioned that in one of his latest talks with the press. He said Pete Hegseth was the first one to stand up and say, let's do it, and we're going to make huge progress. And I think that's going to end up for Pete Hegseth. He's gonna lose his position.
I'd be surprised if he's still in the job at the end of this year. He'll be dumped before then, because this war, it's unless the United States accepts Iran's demands, and I don't see how they do that because they painted themselves into a corner. This war is going to restart, and it's going to continue, and the United States is going to try to use military force to, quote, open the Strait of Hormuz, and he can't do it. Look, the threat of a missile or rocket or drone is sufficient to keep the strait closed. Just the threat, because insurance companies will not insure, or they'll jack up the insurance rates beyond the point that it's not profitable for the ship owners. So the United States is going to try to, I don't know, put personnel in there. If they try to put ships in there to, they'll be targets. It's just they can't do it. There's the cost militarily of opening the straits would incur a lot of physical losses. I think it eventually could be done, but it'd be over, a couple of years, because you'd basically have to go all the way to the interior of Iran to make sure that there's no more drones and or missiles that could be launched from there that could hit ships in the strait. So once you've created a world where there are no more rockets and missiles that could be launched, no more drones, no more submarines, no more mines, then yes, you could say, okay, we secured and opened the strait. And at what cost? That's what is the West, or people around Trump don't understand.
I think there is a lot to be known about the operation, the whole operation, the number of casualties, killed and wounded in the operation. Recently, with this operation that you mentioned, it was I think you were one of the first, commentators to talk about it. It was something it seems more like a raid, not a rescue operation in Iran.
Yeah. Well, I have no doubt that the Joint Special Operations Command had been tasked with carrying out some sort of raid on a nuclear facility. I think it was Isfahan. I don't know that for certain. It could have been Natanz. Natanz was up in that area as well. It could be Bashir. There's a lot of things that don't add up Trump's description of the hundreds of aircraft supposedly involved in this mission. That I don't know what he's talking about, because that if they'd had that many aircraft over there, a lot of those would have been shot down, and they weren't. What we do know is we had the two C-130s on the ground. They did show evidence that they had been, well, at least one of them had been shot at. Now, did the shootings take place in the air, or were those bullet holes the result of what happened on the ground? Don't know. They were carrying, they were prepackaged with two AH-6 Little Birds, each one. Now, on a normal combat search and rescue, a CSAR, you wouldn't go out with two aircraft like that for just one guy. That doesn't make sense, because it just, why would you have two Little Birds on each plane? But they did, and I believe they were preloaded for an operation that was supposed to take place, and that with the downing of this pilot, that mission got repurposed. In other words, they shifted away from it. Now, I know others believe that they'd actually gotten people on the ground and had tried to, and got defeated, but where are the bodies? We don't see any bodies. The explanations offered, though, for why the C-130s couldn't take off, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because they didn't land in soft sand. Yet they're said that they got stuck in the sand. They landed on airstrips. I just saw another video that there's an airstrip about 8 kilometers, 9 kilometers to the north in a valley, but then there was one actually in this area where they landed. So again, it's just, we don't have a good explanation. All I know is the explanation, what Trump and Ratcliffe and Hegseth said the other day about the rescue, was a lie, just a pack full of lies. What's really interesting is they've kept the identity of the pilot and the colonel who was riding in the back seat. They haven't identified them. So I know who the guy is, or at least, I know who the guy is. And it is, this was, I think if it was going to be carried out, they were going to try to get to Isfahan's nuclear facility. They're going to get inside, plant explosives, blow it up, and get away. I think that was the plan. But obviously, they didn't get executed, and I doubt if it will be executed now.
But the colonel himself was one of the main question marks in the whole operation. Why do you need someone like him?
Oh, well, yeah, no, that I think people are reading way too much into that. A good friend of mine who served, he was at the base in Qatar, Al Udeid Air Force Base, at the Combined Air Operations Center about 10 years ago. And he described how the 2-star general that commanded that facility, from time to time, he'd say, hey, I want to go flying in a mission. So he'd go out and fly in a combat mission. And everyone's like, he shouldn't be, he could do it because he was in charge, but it wasn't really the best thing. And I think that that's what happened here. This guy is the vice wing commander of the U.S. base there in Jordan, Mawafik Salti. And, I think he just wanted to get his, get his boots wet, so to speak. This is all going on, and I don't want to just be sitting back in the back. But then he gets shot down. All of a sudden, that was a priority. Recovering him was an issue. But again, we don't know what happened. He was on the ground for almost 48 hours. And, we've heard everything from, he had a sprained ankle to a broken leg. And, from, I've seen one map which pinpoints that where he landed after he ejected from the plane. And then most likely he only had to crawl about a mile and a half away to get up into a mountain where he could be hide behind some rocks. But then the issue is, finding him. How do they locate him? Yeah, lots of questions.
Yeah. Larry, there is a report on CBS talking with one of the survivors of the Iranian attack in Kuwait, in which he's mentioning what has happened that day. I think there are many questions right now if the numbers that Donald Trump and his administration have been providing us with are accurate. They're not accurate in terms of the people who have been.
Oh, they're not accurate at all. There's at least twice as many killed and wounded as they're reporting. At least twice as many. The numbers are far higher. They're just, they're lying.
Here is what this guy, he's a U.S. Army survivor of the attack. Here is what he said on CBS News.
Interview with a member of the Army's 103rd Sustainment Command, which is based in Iowa. The soldier survived an Iranian drone strike that killed 6 others and says their unit was unprepared to defend itself. We agreed to conceal the soldier's face and voice. Here's CBS News correspondent Jonah Kaplan.
Photos and video obtained by CBS News reveal the charred aftermath of the deadliest Iranian attack on U.S. forces in 5 weeks of war.
Everything shook, and it's something like what you see in the movies. Everything, your ears are ringing. There's dust and smoke everywhere.
This soldier was part of a crew of about 60 troops stationed at the military post in Kuwait hit by the strike. He says his unit's leadership ordered them there despite intelligence showing it was a potential drone target.
We moved closer to Iran, to a deeply unsafe area that was a known target.
So what was the reason that you were told for why you needed to be there?
I don't think there was a good reason ever articulated.
The attack killed 6 American soldiers and injured dozens more. Were these deaths preventable?
In my opinion, absolutely yes.
He said they were moving closer to Iran, not instead of they're removing them from that area, putting them in some other places far away from Iran. Right. What was that, Larry?
I don't know. These were not attack troops. These are all, I call admin types, maybe doing intelligence work. It's just a failure to do proper risk assessment. And if you're going to put troops forward, at least put them in a facility that is bunkered, that has some protection against an explosive. This had a very light roof. It was easily breached. So, this again, it's just reflective of the fact this was not well planned out at all. They're just throwing stuff against the wall, hoping something sticks.
It seems to me that the way that he's talking about, it seems that Donald Trump and the administration thought that everything gonna collapse. Then they were moving the troops, the forces closer to Iran to get in
Well, yeah. Again, this was putting people in bases in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain. I don't know what they were thinking. As far as that they would be able, well, actually I do. I think there was an enormous amount of overconfidence that the Patriot missile batteries that were there, the air defense systems would work and would protect them. And it turned out they were inadequate. They don't protect people.
No. Larry, Benjamin Netanyahu finally achieved the war he wanted for such a long time, and he really wanted this war. What is the outcome for him? What is the outcome for Donald Trump? So far, I'm not there because we are still in the war, and it's not this negotiation. I don't see any positive outcome from these sort of negotiations in Pakistan. And here is what John Kerry said about the behavior of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Were you ever part of any conversations like that? I know he's made that pitches to past administrations. Were you ever a part of that? And were you surprised that he was able to convince Trump to do this?
Well, I was part of any number of conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu, conversations that took place in other countries.
Pitching the U.S. to strike Iran.
Yes, he wanted us to strike. He came to President Obama. He made a presentation to ask to strike. President Obama refused. President Biden refused. President Bush refused. The only president who has agreed to this, obviously, is President Trump. And it's really...
I think this is a huge, because he was asking each and every president in the United States for such a long time to do that, but finally Donald Trump did it.
Well, I know that there was the plans were well advanced in 2006 to try to do a regime change to take out the government in Iran and put in a government that the United States would be in control of. But that collapsed. That didn't proceed. But there was active planning for it. I know the CIA was actively planning for it. So, and DOD was positioned, but I think it was a combination of the increased insurgency in Iraq that finally convinced the United States that they had their hands too full, that they didn't have Iraq under control, and Afghanistan as well was not under control. So, but they definitely planned it, and Trump listened to Bibi and went along with what Bibi said. That's a simple way to put it. This is Trump's war. He's responsible, and it hasn't turned out as they thought. It's led to a dramatic increase in fuel costs around the world, supply chain shortages, shutdown of it's going to make it very difficult to produce computer chips because of the helium shortage. Agriculture suffering with the cutoff of fertilizer, and then the rising price of fertilizer. It's also led other countries then to start, getting rid of U.S. dollars. So the dollar, the value of the dollar is falling dramatically, and France withdrew all of its gold from the United States and returned it to France. Japan's starting to sell off its U.S. treasuries. So it's instead of a world in which the United States can reestablish itself as the economic power, the superpower controlling the events, it's damaged us severely, and that's on top of the reputational damage for being militarily weak. Because we've just demonstrated we couldn't stop the Houthis in the Red Sea, and now we can't reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and all these Gulf countries that put their trust in us. Oh, we got your back. Well, turns out we didn't.
How problematic is the situation between Israel and Lebanon for the ongoing, for the upcoming talks between the two parties, Iran and the United States?
That's been going on for, 50 years, 46 years. Hezbollah was born in 1982 as a result, and partly as a consequence of Israel's invasion of southern Lebanon. So Israel's been on this almost half a century quest to get control of Lebanon and has been unable to do so, and is going to fail this time. Hezbollah is, despite the claims that Hezbollah was severely weakened and destroyed, and the Nasrallah, yes, he was assassinated. Leadership is going. We got rid of the leadership, and then we used the cell phones, exploding pagers, and now what's happened? Hezbollah's back. It's fighting effectively. It's destroying, hundreds, literally more than 100 Israeli Merkava tanks. And when you destroy those tanks, you are killing or wounding crew members. So no telling how many have been killed and wounded in those assaults. But they're talking about trying to find an agreement. Lebanon's president traditionally has been Christian, but then what did Israel do the other day? On Wednesday, killed a bunch of Christians. Yeah, that's a good way to get them to come around. Go kill the women and children and old men. Yeah, that'll make the Lebanese saying, "Oh yeah, we got it. Let's get along with these Israelis. They can be our friends." Not going to happen.
Larry, if you were to mention the main barriers for the two parties to negotiate, to talk, considering 10-point proposal, what are the main barriers for the two parties?
Well, the United States wants to eliminate Iran's nuclear program, and Iran's not going to eliminate its nuclear program. The United States wants Iran to cut back and curtail production of ballistic missiles and how far they can travel. Iran's not going to do that at all. They're not going to negotiate over control of the Strait. I mean, Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so that's not a negotiable point. They've already established it's under new ownership. You're going to pay to use it. The United States may not like it, but it can't do a thing to change that. Yeah. So no, I see no foundation for an agreement other than the United States surrendering and said, having to admit, okay, we were wrong. We shouldn't have done this. Iran is already, through military attacks, driven U.S. out of many of the bases in the Persian Gulf, and they won't be back. U.S. is not going back to Bahrain, where the Fifth Fleet was headquarters. That's done. So, Iran is actually, well on its way to achieving what most of the points that are listed there in that 10-point document.
Is that something similar? Are you expecting something similar happening in Iraq?
What do you mean?
Because are they gonna? Because they withdrew the troops from Iraq.
Oh yeah, U.S. Yeah. Oh, you're going to see a closer
Not
relationship.
only U.S. troops, we had European troops as well.
Right. No, you're going to see a closer relationship going forward between Iran and Iraq. That's for sure. That they, Iran will probably tell them, hey, go ahead and retake Kuwait. The Al-Sabah family's not going to be happy about that, but this was this one of the fruits of victory. Bahrain, I think, will return under Iranian control. So it'll be up to the UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia to figure out what are they going to basically accept Iran's new status as the dominant power in the Middle East, replacing the United States, or are they going to continue to hitch their wagon to the U.S.? UAE is going to try. UAE has they don't have the economic infrastructure to stay intact. They're very, very fragile country. And so I think they're going to be folded back into Oman.
Do you see the role of China in what's going on?
Yeah, well, China played a big role with Pakistan, and again for China, they want to get the supply chains flowing again, because China is somewhat dependent upon both gas, liquid natural gas, oil, helium, other elements that come out of the Persian Gulf. But again, getting some of those things restarted is going to may take months, if not more than a year or two. So, but China definitely played a significant role in this. It wasn't just Pakistan on its own. I think China may have sweetened the pot for Iran by providing some additional weaponry that they need, and radar systems, communications. So, but yeah, China's been an important player behind the scenes.
It seems that they've sent 3 cargoes to Iran so far.
Right.
During this, and you've mentioned it's going to be mostly about the electronic warfare, somehow some radar operation. I don't know what can they send to Iran just right in the middle of the war.
Well, they've been as this war is going on. I heard from a friend that Iran's air defense system had been significantly upgraded over the course of the last 3 weeks, and that the United States is finding it harder and harder to protect itself. So clearly some material, some technology had been rolling in and was getting integrated into the system. It's still not perfect, and it's not the type of system that can prevent any rocket or missile from entering Iranian airspace, but apparently it is U.S. military planners are more concerned now than they were at the start of the war.
Considering many, Larry, we have the people in Iran and outside Iran who are arguing that Iranian decision to go to talk with the United States in a time span of 2 weeks, a ceasefire of 2 weeks, it was stupid. But after all, is there anything significant happening on the battlefield in terms of production of weapons, interceptors, cruise missiles? Is that significant? 2 weeks, or maybe let's assume 4 weeks, not 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I think the 2-week deadline is an arbitrary deadline or arbitrary time. I think the real reason that Iran did this was at the request of China. Basically give peace a chance. Let's see if the United States will come to its senses. The Chinese seem to believe that what Donald Trump says is different from what Donald Trump does, and that some of these extremely bizarre comments he's made over the course of this past week don't reflect his actual thinking, and that the United States may be able to be persuaded to accept the new status quo. I think they're overly optimistic. I'm hoping that the Iranians, if they go to Islamabad and if they sit down with the United States, that they refuse to meet with Kushner and Witkoff, that they'll advance. If they're in the room, we're not talking. Get them out.
Do you think that J.D. Vance could do something different from what we've seen so far? With all negotiations, with Russians, with Iranians, these two guys were incapable of doing something substantial, doing something important. And how do you see, J.D. Vance being part of the team? Because it's, after all, in my opinion, Larry, in my humble opinion, I think that J.D. Vance can save himself, his political life, his opportunity for 2028, if he's serious about doing something, not only with Iran, but also with Russia as well. That could save him. It's a golden opportunity. Is that the case, or we are expecting too much from J.D. Vance?
Yeah, I think you're expecting too much. Let's assume that, the agreement that the Iranians will accept is not acceptable to the Zionists, period. So when J.D. Vance, who's already seen as viewed with skepticism by the Zionist camp, he'll be subjected to unrelenting attacks. And don't doubt the possibility that Witkoff and Kushner will be throwing him under the bus too. Just saying, "Oh, we told him not to do this, but he did it anyway." So any deal that he agrees to, we'll have to come back and get Donald Trump's blessing, the 2 thumbs up, and I don't see that happening. So you're right. It would be not, if it was J.D. Vance, if Trump had been removed as president and J.D. Vance was now president, yes, then he would have the power to do these agreements and deals with the Russians and with the Iranians that would make him a formidable force in the 2028 election. But as long as he's still sort of the bag handler, the vice president, he doesn't get to make the call. He can negotiate the deal, and if it's a bad deal, he gets blamed. And if it's a great deal, if it succeeds, Donald Trump gets the credit. Yeah, so he's just it's sort of a thankless job. I think if anybody could go have potential success, he could. But like I said, when you play it out, if Trump doesn't like the deal, Vance will get blamed for selling out America, or however you want to call it. Maybe Trump will talk about him like he's talked about Alex Jones and Megyn Kelly, and not a very stupid person, just not very bright.
He doesn't care about these people. He said the same about Marjorie Taylor Greene. He said it's unbelievable the way that he's firing at those people who basically supported him without expecting anything from him. These people just supporting him. It's not just Lindsey Graham supporting Donald Trump. It was these people just using their power, their influence to support him.
Right. Yeah, no,
They-
it's a one-way street with Trump. There's no loyalty down. You got to be loyal to him, worship him, but he'll throw you under the bus at the blink of an eye.
I don't see Donald Trump. I don't see Donald Trump, if he decides to double down on what's going on with the war, it's not going to help him in a long run. Because, Larry, if we assume before this war started, even the first round of the war, it was June 2025, that he decided just to give the green light to Benjamin Netanyahu to attack Iran. Now, you look at the sequence of what has happened, so it's a total failure. Strategically, militarily, everything. I don't know how far he would go with this sort of, suggestions of Benjamin Netanyahu. Is he suicidal? Because we have to. If that's the case, we can say that he's suicidal.
Yeah, I don't know if it's blackmail. If he's completely compromised and he's being threatened in order to go along with this, or if it's just his own narcissism. He has his obsession with getting rid of Iran. That's not new. He was talking about that 30, 40 years ago, when he was a young guy, and again, didn't know a lot, but had a lot of opinions. And now that with his brain dysfunction, the things that have been kept back, suppressed, are coming to the fore. And now that's why, we got to get rid of. We're going to obliterate their civilization. I'm not even sure what that means, other than if you're going to commit mass murder, which and again, Trump's not. He doesn't have a filter. There's no social consciousness that's sitting there saying, no, you can't say this and you can't do that. No, he's completely unfiltered now, which is sadly one of the signs of dementia. Comes with aging.
Yeah, I think the Epstein file has a lot to do with what's going on with Donald Trump. Here is what the report on the Epstein file, the latest.
Going for the Trump administration right now, Antonia, things are going so well that a war that has bumped the Epstein investigation to the back page for the last 5 weeks is going so badly that the First Lady of the United States makes an unscheduled, impromptu statement about the Epstein investigations that the administration was so desperate to get out of the headlines, to get back in the headlines during an international armed conflict where 48 hours ago, the President of the United States, her husband, was threatening the destruction of a whole civilization. So we are 48 hours separated between threatening war crimes and distracting from the threatening of war crimes and a colossal disaster of our own creation in the Middle East. And now we are burying a statement by the First Lady about an investigation that the Department of Justice has so bungled that Pam Bondi, who 1 week ago was the Attorney General of the United States and who 1 week from now should be testifying before the House Oversight Committee, will not be testifying. And the argument that the administration is advancing there is, well, she's no longer the Attorney General.
Yeah. The war is going really well when you have to have Melania come out and talk about Epstein in order to draw attention away from the war. Yeah, hilarious.
This is not going to go anywhere good for Donald Trump.
Yeah. It is, he's caught. And, the thing that's so shocking is instead of him trying to cultivate or retain the support of people, he is attacking the biggest social media platforms and influencers in the United States and in the world. So when you go after Tucker, Candace has got the #1 show on on TV, but Tucker, Rogan, and Candace, good Lord, there you're talking millions, and And Trump keeps talking about, oh, you're not on television anymore. Nobody watches the goddamn thing, okay? You know, the people are not tuned in to CNN and MSNBC and Fox. It's just a bunch of old farts like me that'll watch Fox. You know, people your age and younger, you're doing other things.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today.
All right. I'm sorry we couldn't see Colonel Wilkerson today.
Yeah,
but
exactly. He's traveling. That's why he's not with us today. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah,
but
well,
we miss him.
We'll see him next week.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, my friend. I'll see you Monday.
See you on Monday.
Bye-bye.